When I was dead, my spirit turned to seek. I passed from door to door and saw my friends at feast beneath the green orange boughs. From hand to mouth they pushed the wine. They sang. They sucked the pulp of plum and peach and pear. They sang, they jested, they laughed, they dared. For each was loved of each. Said one tomorrow shall be like today, but much more sweet.
Welcome to Every Friday with Dan and Olivia. I'm Dan Miles.
And I'm Olivia Dabo.
A nice delivery. Well, last week we
Thanks,
were
Daniel.
last week we were joined by Dale Ladoucer.
That's me.
That was her track "At Home" that we just heard to open the show. This week we're going to be discussing some different aspects of her career and her interests. Joining us again from Edmonton, it's Dale Ladoucer. Welcome back.
Hello.
So lovely to have you back.
It feels like I was just talking to you like 10 minutes ago.
I know. I should have changed my outfit.
Yes.
Yeah, literally. We all should have just found a color that we all have in our wardrobe, picked it out and put it on and had a little celebration.
So that piece of music, it had more like of a rock feel, but still an unusual rhythm, not a straight ahead rhythm. It had harmonics going on. Do you remember an artist named Joan Armatrading?
I love Joan Armatrading.
Yeah, that one.
Me too.
Show some emotion. Yeah, that song, that album teleported me to a happy place.
Well, your voice on that one kind of reminded me a little bit of her.
Compliment.
Thank you. Oh my God.
I loved it too. And funnily enough, you being a groove meister up there in Canada, we feel it all the way here in Arizona and Los Angeles, and especially on that track. It actually reminded me, I hope this is a compliment, it's meant to me just because they were total groove meisters also, is it had kind of a Toto rhythm
Wait.
to it, you know.
Shuffle beat.
You know what I'm talking about, Dan.
Yeah, the shuffle feel.
Yeah, those Toto brothers.
Yeah.
They were funky.
The Porcaros.
Oh, totally funky. And you're probably hearing those frequencies because those bass notes, they have such a long waveform, so they travel.
So, I am so excited to dive into your thoughts and feelings on medieval music, so much so that it inspired you to, not too long ago, write and produce, and you actually finished this medieval album, which is just so cool to me because it's so rare that you hear that kind of music, and I'm interested what turned you on about that music to sort of want to do a whole album on it.
It was interesting because my neighbor was having a barbecue. It was his birthday, and he said, "You got to come over and meet my friend Henrik, who is an archer. And you're into archery, so I brought over my bow and I started talking to him, and he was here doing this master's at the U of A, in regards to animals, and because he's a biologist, he's an amazing human being, and we started talking music, and he goes, "Oh, my wife and I, we play. She plays a nickel harpa, which is a 14th century keyed fiddle, and he plays a thing called a hummelchen, which is a far less obnoxious bagpipe because hummelchen is like I guess it means bumblebee. It's a very, very small bagpipe, but it's got a really unique and ancient sound to it. You'd recognize it, I'm sure. My other friend was there, and she plays a Celtic harp, and it was like, well, hell, why aren't we jamming?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so we had this incredible kinetic energy and just a beautiful musical rapport. And they're very accomplished human beings without ego, and that's conducive to great music creation. So we did some classics, like Sally Garden, which I think is probably one of the most beautiful tunes that O'Carolan ever wrote. O'Carolan wrote all these 17th century tunes, and you get teleported to the British Isles. Then we wrote some pieces that were just creations on the spot in the medieval vein, and those were the most exciting to me.
That's ambitious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know probably as much about it as you do, but I do know that medieval music is some of the oldest music that's sort of on the planet, today. And as is Celtic music. I feel like there's a dire need to infiltrate that back into our society, especially for younger people and for, just for all ages, really, because it's part of our history. The thing that I love that's always attracted to me about prog rock is that, basically the genesis of prog rock is medieval music. It's the court gestures and the musicians who went into the court of the lord and ladies and the king and the queen, and they would perform for them, they would entertain them, and they would sing. It was folk art, it was musical folk art, basically. It was like of the people, and they would sort of bring it to the hierarchy, to the king and the queen, so that they could see what was really going on in the roots of the people. Because they were, for the most part, and still are, when you think of the royal family, they're kind of cut off from the rest of society because of the class system. So they don't really necessarily always get in there with the people. So I know that it was a kind of music that would definitely entertain the king and the queen, because they would learn about something and discover something that they knew nothing about. So it was almost like they would bring a gift to the king and the queen and present these kind of stories, if you will. I mean, they were kind of some of the first storytellers, but in terms of the category of music, that's how it was back then. And the instruments that they would play would be the lute, and there's a whole array of musical instruments that also would be just so great to put in the hands of kids today. And I don't know how if you can kind of go to these music shops and find really old, medieval music for kids to pick up and play these days, to kind of familiarize themselves, because it should be there, really, shouldn't it? Because it's part of the history.
I know that there's some harp makers. There's some really good harp makers in Canada, and I'm sure elsewhere. But things like a nyckelharpa, I know that Henrik and Victoria they know of a few nyckelharpa makers in Sweden, but I think they really, I think that's it's really far and few between. It'd be very hard to get your hands on an ancient instrument like that. But there are some people that are trying to, build them again. Luthiers that are, digging in, feeling the same way that you just vocalized. They're trying to keep it alive.
But how did you go about conceptually writing this album? You got together with these wonderful musicians, obviously, and you guys jammed, and you started I'm sure it started, take on a form that just sort of unraveled itself organically.
Like any good group of people, the music quickly becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And that comes from, and I'm sure you've experienced this being a musician, you surround yourself with good players and you become a better player. You surround yourself with people that are open to listening to each other, and that's where the magic lies. And so that happened very organically, which is something I'm very blessed about.
That's amazing. Did you find that you sort of channeled it as you do a lot of your music as well? Did it kind of, as the music started to unravel and you'd put together this sort of creative musical tribe, if you will, did you guys get in these situations where you'd all be maybe in a horseshoe circle and you'd be jamming and writing these melodies, and then suddenly it would just sort of write itself?
There were moments like that. And how did you know that our configuration was horseshoe?
Yeah, it's a hunch.
Yes. Yeah, it was exactly.
Because it's one of the oldest. It's one of the oldest shapes, right? In history, the horseshoe. It's sort of like either way you have it, whether it's backwards or upright.
and good to converse, good to communicate. Everybody can see each other. It's funny. Naturally, I mean, like, I was playing with someone who has a day job, and two doctors, and here they are with these magnificent instruments. And so I naturally, being just a full-time professional, well, professional musician, who I took the lead, but I found that I quickly didn't need to.
Well, you mentioned the lute, and you think of a band like Yes, and Steve Howe would grab a mandolin and a heartbeat, and it would fit right in with Yes. I also think of the recorder, that sort of tutti sound with the medieval. But what I was thinking of when Olivia was talking about the court of the kings and telling the stories. I mean, troubadours. One of their jobs was to go from town to town. An easy way to tell a story was write a song about it. Made it easier for people to remember. So a lot of legends were preserved. They were almost like, the newspaper headlines of their day was to have troubadours come into town and tell you about some battle or some court intrigue or something and present it in the form of a song. And you think of the town crier with his bell, and then like the troubadours in a more pleasant way musically. But I also have to shout out the Holy Grail and Robin's Minstrels. Because I mean, they were singing tunes about Robin in real time and following him around.
Ran away.
Yeah, brave Sir Robin, he bravely ran away. All that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what they would do. They would preserve a story in musical. So that's just another direction I went. Well, let me ask you, Dale. I mean, we hadn't planned to do this, but we were talking about instrumentation and your thing about going backwards and forwards at the same time by favoring the stick. Do you have maybe a sample from the ancient jammers we can check out?
I do. This opens with it's Fenizi Few, and it's merged with a Swedish tune called Rhythm, and it is it's the earliest song ever found. It was written in the 1200s, and they found it on this parchment. It was found in an old church, and I learned the two parts, and it's the first melodic line that you hear.
I noticed that Sweden comes up a lot. I mean, are we going to have to close this out with ABBA or something? I mean, Sweden's come up. All right. Well, yeah, I recall you mentioning this composition on last week's show. So yeah, here we now have a chance to hear it. This is exciting.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
just riveting. It just puts you into a trance, doesn't it? I mean, it does me. To me, there's so many visuals that just immediately come to mind. It's like just, it takes you back to, it's just, there's so much grace to it. It's, balletic, and I can see why people dance that way. You look back in these films that have been made, even over the last 20 years. One that comes to mind is, these great BBC, things of this queen or that queen. The one that comes to mind is actually the film with Kate Winslet, Elizabeth, which I know that they made several of. Yeah. But the first one, the way they touch each other's hands, there's something so sensual about dancing that way, like a man and a woman, like that, just that exchange of hands, one against each other. And it's how people courted each other in those days, and that's all embedded in this music to me. There's just so many things that come to mind, that things that were to come. Do you know what I'm saying? It was a great way of sort of feeling somebody out, and through the music would evoke people to dance, and then through the dance would evoke them to do, what I'm saying? It would take them to the next stage. And I think it's something that we don't often think about with art. It's almost like, I guess it's comparable to sort of going on a first date with somebody and going to a museum and seeing what somebody knows about art, talking about a certain painter and hearing their description of, how that painting moves them, and the other one sort of stays quiet and learns so much more about that other person.
The pace, it was a simpler time, and people actually had time to get to know themselves as well as the other person.
How many players were we hearing on that recording? I know most of the beginning was just you.
Yeah, and that was a simpler piece. There's a lot more intricate work on the album, but that was initially it was me. Then I was joined by the nickel harpa, and then everyone joined in. So it's a 4-piece band.
Yeah, you mentioned it being 2 parts, and so I picked up on that. Yeah, the other 2 things I'd mentioned is I was getting the vibe of a Bach fugue.
Yeah.
And also I was getting the vibe of when you open up a little musical box, like Olivia's talking about dancers, and it just goes ding, 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 ding. It plays a little, the little mechanical.
Yes.
It was awesome that you shared that with us. And when we're linking everybody up to your solo albums and stuff, we'll make sure that they're aware of this one as well.
Lovely. Yeah, it's almost playing this music and listening to this music is it's like a baptism in a way. It's a real cleansing kind of an experience, just shedding the data and the bytes and the social media, and it really just washes all that away. And yeah, it's a very cleansing experience.
That's one of the things that I find that transfixes you, the listener, listening to this piece that you played, Dale, is that you, as a consummate performer, artist, and songwriter and composer, evidently, in this particular case, you're approaching it. Clearly, there was maybe a theme to this album that you spoke about with your musical comrades at the time, but that was kind of coming through you. And one of the things that I really love about it, aside from the really potent melody, is your trust of the music. That's sort of what transfixed me to go to all of these places, is that you took your time. If you were going to listen to a musician, or they were coming into your court to play for you, it was a decompressing time. You were more willing to kind of sit back and relax and let it wash over you. Like, based on how you just described it, we just don't have that anymore. So to me, this kind of music is so rare. When you hear it, it's like, oh God, thank you for reminding me and opening up my heart up to something that I'm still capable of receiving. It's just that I haven't been programmed. My mind hasn't been programmed to receiving this kind of information in such a long time, but we're still able. So I'm just so excited that you have this product that people can buy, this album. I mean, if anything, to put it on in the car, or, while you're around the house, as this kind of beautiful ambient music, because it really does conjure up so many visual, descriptive, wonderful places that you can go with it. And it kind of really seeps into the heart and penetrates these great places. Did you sing it all on this album, or was it primarily just playing?
Yeah, and we had fun with the singing too. There's a piece called Tourbillon that the harp player sings a verse in German. The nickel harpa person sings in French. The Hamilton player sings in Swedish, and I sing in Jimi Hendrix.
Ah. That's brilliant. God, is there any way you can play us a track that you're singing on? Because I would just be so curious to hear if your voice changes at all, if there's maybe more of a Renaissance type of stylistic thing that I'm sure it stays primarily distinctively you, but do you, I mean, for example, I don't know if I'm sure you know Jeff Buckley on his album, the second to last one, unfortunately, before he passed away, there was a track on it where he used his very high falsetto voice, and it was a Renaissance piece. It was a medieval piece of music where he sung. He doesn't sound like Jeff Buckley, but he transported us to this place, and I don't know if he even knew he was going to sing it that way, but you should check it out.
Yeah. No, I know the track you're talking about, and absolutely, he just threw himself into that. It was like he lost himself into the music. Yeah, that was beautiful example.
To me, that was such a testament and a litmus test to him being, not unlike Peter Gabriel, just a true finite artist who, there was no concern whatsoever that he may not sound like a dude on this track. It's like, oh, da, 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 la, 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 la. And you know what I say? I mean, that's the melody, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, you're like, that's Jeff Buckley. Like, what the hell is that? I'm sure there were, but I'm sure nobody actually listening to it, they weren't thinking that. I mean, some serious, he has such a palpable audience of highly artistic musical people that I just don't see anybody who wouldn't have appreciated that track immensely. And, it was interesting to me that it didn't really correlate with the rest of the album thematically. It just kind of came out of nowhere. So it was like this beautiful little bonus track.
Right. Yeah.
But I would just be interested to see, you mentioned Jimi Hendrix, and I love that reference, but that piece that you played is so ultra feminine, which I love, and it's almost like a piece of china. You know what I mean? You know that it could possibly break at any point in time. It's just so delicate is the word I'm looking for. So I would just love to hear. I'd be interested to hear what your vocals are alongside of the composition.
What I'm envisioning is, excuse me while I play my lute. Down, 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 down.
Exactly.
And as a matter of fact, I did channel Jimmy, but I should say Dylan, because it was all along the Watchtower.
Some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. There's too much confusion, I can't get no relief. Businessmen, they drink my wine, plowmen dig my earth, and none of them along the line know what any of it is worth. No reason to get excited, the thief he kindly spoke. There are many here among us who feel life is but a joke. But you and I, we've been through that, and this is not our fate. So let us not talk falsely, now the hour is getting late.
Well, I'd still rank that ahead of Dylan's version. So for me, it'd be like Jimmy first, that second, and then Dylan third. What inspired you to bust into that? Was it spontaneous, or something you noticed that would fit in the framework of the music?
They all started coming up with these languages, and I know how to say I love you in 48 languages, but mostly I just know English and swearing. So I couldn't, like I was thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And we were playing the song and I just started saying the words and it just somehow fit. It was kind of meant to be, I think.
Yeah, definitely. What a great interpretation. It's so unexpected, but yet it works. I love when artists take risks like that. I think it's all part of it. It's just whatever your interpretation is.
I would imagine in medieval times they had their share of barefoot servants.
Yes, absolutely. No, the whole album was quite a joy to experiment with, and really that was a really joyous recording because of the nature of the music we were working with. Yeah.
And speaking of Bob Dylan, of all the many aspects we've covered, you're sort of futuristic with the Chapman stick. Clearly, with medieval music, you're going way back. But another big vibe of yours is, you mentioned Joni Mitchell earlier, I think Olivia did, the sort of old school 1960s folk music, which, of course, Dylan and Joan Baez and people were a big part of. The social protest sort of vibe that musicians had in the 60s. I know that's important part of what you do, too, and you're an active environmentalist, and you have other movements you're involved in sequence. I know you do a lot of musical performances at these type of rallies and events because they tie in together, your lyrics, your artistic lifestyle, and wanting to save the planet. And I mentioned at the beginning of this that we're going to talk about other aspects besides music, sort of parallel to that. So why don't we get into that a little bit?
Well, I mean, anybody who cares about, the planet or nature or beauty of any kind, anybody that has any capacity for love would care about, preserving, the grandmother, right? The mother to us all. But not to get too hippie, but it's something that I grew up with. My sister who was 9 years older than me. She was a woman of the 60s, and she joined a thing in Ontario called Pollution Probe, and I started doing artwork for their ads. That because they'd get kids, they would feature kids' artwork, and I started learning at a very early age about toxins and about climate change and global warming and ozone depletion and things like that. And then as I got older, I started, to supplement my gig income, I would write for, a part-time freelance journalist, and I would write these pieces just on those aspects that I know something about and that I have beautiful resource people to tap, to confirm, suspicions of what I was, writing about. And over the last 25, 30 years, I've gained a bit of a clear, fairly clear picture on some of the more complex issues of climate change and global warming. And I believe that it's just a natural arm of being an artist to want to join in the chorus of voices that need to create and cause change.
Well said.
Very well said.
Let's also factor in, as we've mentioned a few times, you're Canadian. So,
Yay.
Well, I mean, the Canadian perspective of politics and world matters is a little different than the American one. Now, we have listeners in other countries and other regions, but we do actually have, I won't use the word disproportionate, but I know we have a lot of listeners who are Canadian. And, I mean, how do you feel about, the things that happen in the USA? Obviously, we're huge polluters, maybe not as bad as China, but, you have...
Canada's third.
Is Canada third? We'll see. This is the kind of thing we're
in
learning here.
in some production of, like, because our tar sands promote a great amount of greenhouse gases. So on the scale of polluters, Canada, which has like a fairly small piece of your size of population, are pretty up there on the polluters guilt list.
Well, Olivia mentioned Trey and Matt. Didn't they write a song, Blame Canada?
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah.
It's nice that you can laugh about it, because I feel like in many regards, a lot of, if I were Canadian, I don't know if I would be so continuously accepting of this riffraff, that, you know what I mean? That I know it's meant in good jest, and I know that we have to. Everybody should have a sense of humor about themselves, and I suppose their country. Some countries are better at that than others. But I love Canada. I've always said it's a place that I love to stop to. After I've come back from England, before I come back to the US, it's like it's got this beautiful quality about it where you really. It's really somewhere in the middle of the two places, and it's kind of got the best of both worlds of both countries. And most of all, aside from the scenery, it's an incredibly, I find it to be an incredibly clean country. There's a lot of pride there in terms of how you keep it and maintain it. But I think the people also are just so lovely,
Yeah,
I just meet person after person where there's just not a bad bone in their body,
well, I think there is. There's jerks in every country, right? In every shape and size. But yeah, I'm very. It's funny. Dylan says patriotism is the last refuge to which a scoundrel clings. But yeah. I really. I'm very proud to be Canadian in a lot of respects. My mom has a gypsy heart, and we moved around. Whenever she'd get bored, we'd move. And so subsequently, I've lived in every province in Canada except Saskatchewan and PEI, which is, pretty much the whole thing. And I've gotten to kayak in the North Country, and I've been to both oceans, and I've just got such a beautiful sense of the country, and it means a great deal to me to preserve those our natural resources. It's a fine, it's not an endless supply, and but the thing is that we're all connected, and social media actually demonstrates that so clearly, that it's such a small little orb that we're on, that we've really got to take responsibility in a very, very expeditious manner.
Yes, well said. Yeah, absolutely. And so really, that's what generated you wanting. Your vision, your care, your deep desire to see climate change and environmental change and all this stuff. The severity of what we have to contend with right now is no joke. But it sounds to me, it's interesting, the parallel universe of activism and artistry.
Right.
The two really do go hand in hand. It's kind of like Hollywood and the White House, politics and those two go hand in hand too. A lot of decisions are predicated on what's going on politically, believe it or not, in Hollywood. Meaning what kind of movies they want to make in Washington gets infiltrated into the the White House stuff gets infiltrated to Hollywood, and then it's kind of it ends up coming out in the content of what you see.
Form of education.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about not wanting to get too hippie. We get very hippie on this show. We encourage hippiness. Have no fear. Go to Hippie Town. Get as hippie as you want.
I think.
Don't go to Funky Town. Go to Hippie Town.
Far out, man. Heavy.
Right on, man. We're all about Cheech and Chong movies, man.
Flashing back to that, we haven't mentioned yet the Broke Ensemble, or would you say ensemble?
Ensemble, the Broke Ensemble.
So this is your band name, it's Dale Ladoucer and the Broke Ensemble. So
That's right. That's right.
I can think of a couple ways that we came up with that. I mean, what was the inspiration for that name?
We were camping, and a keyboard player from the other band we're in, Takoi Ride, who actually have been around for centuries now. They're about to celebrate their 50th anniversary. These guys have been playing their instruments longer than I've been alive. I mean, it's just
amazing.
Yeah, the keyboardist Dennis Manili. We were trying to think of names, and we were, griping about, gigs and how far and few they were, and blah blah blah. And he just came up with it, and we went, yes, the Broke Ensemble. So there we go.
That could backfire on you. A club owner could say, "Well, I don't have to pay you guys. You're the Broke Ensemble. I don't want to ruin your trip and give you money."
There's one thing I wanted to say that was from what Olivia had said. Artists, I think because they spend a lot of time reflecting and observing and stuff, it has to be that why activism goes hand in hand. Because when you see injustices in the world, and and you're observing, and you're invested in your environment and your surroundings, you want to preserve it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, of all the issues out there, the planet, if we screw that one up, nothing else is going to matter. Every other issue is going to die with the planet. Our friend Robbie Rist, Olivia and I were on his show. One time he said he has a theory that the Earth is the human race's starter planet. Like you get a starter home, like we're going to screw this one all up and learn how to do it right, then go off and find another planet. The space travel. I mean, he doesn't mean it like seriously, but I mean, we're making such a mess of it that he thinks, like, maybe he says it hopefully we can go find another one that is pristine and not screw that one up the way we screwed this one up. The thing that disappoints me is the financial aspect. Like, you would hope that a person who is in a corporation who says, look, we make this much money if we pollute the ocean. We make this much money if we don't pollute the ocean. Let's make the money and pollute the ocean. What the hell? I mean, come on, man.
I learned this from a scientist who is actually well known in Canada and beyond, named David Suzuki, who talked about how countries have a GDP, but what they should have is a GPI, which is the genuine progress indicator. See, in the GDP, there's no minuses. There's only pluses. If a company makes all these, vinyl siding, but they pollute the river, it's still just a plus. So the genuine progress indicator would be, there would be minuses to, environmental pollution and toxins and employees dying because of the fumes and things like that, which to me makes so much more sense. So there's a movement now to try and shift. I mean, it's going to be a long haul, but to shift the GDP to the genuine progress indicator, which I think would be helpful.
Well, another encouraging sign is younger generations. Like, I have two boys that are 7 and 10. They didn't grow up in the Great Depression. They didn't grow up in a world war per se. There's this terrorism issue, but eventually maybe a generation worldwide will come along and go, what the hell is going on here? I mean, just like they're predicting now, there'll be a time when a whole generation doesn't even get a driver's license because the cars drive themselves, right. Or a whole generation doesn't know about this power supply because they have this other one. But the point is, if somebody came up with a good alternative to fossil fuels or nuclear energy or whatever it was, very often that patent will get bought up by a company who's going to lose business if a better alternative comes out, and they'll just buy it up and bury it.
The people are moving, like they're ignoring a lot of that trend, though, and I completely, there is documentation there that absolutely supports what you just said. But when you go to countries like Holland, where everyone's running on solar, and I mean, like, it just makes so much sense. There's so many good green jobs out there to be had, that the people are now just, starting to, ignore what their governments are doing and just investing in this green energy. And it's really starting to be a bit of a green revolution, which is really wonderful.
True. And it shouldn't be that, well, we'll only do the solar panels if it's more profitable. It should be morally the thing to do. I mean, you're talking about the sun. I mean, here in Arizona, where we get like lots and lots of sun, what you're finding now is, like, at our main library, Burton Bar Library, the parking lot, they built a parking structure that not only does it provide shade for all the cars, but it has solar panels on the top of it, and a large section of the power that comes into the parking lot goes back into the library to power the lights, et cetera, et cetera. There needs to be more of that. They have a car now where there's a solar panel on the roof of the car. Yeah. So as your car is sitting in the sun or you're driving around, the sun itself is recharging it. I mean, there needs to be more and more and more.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I mean, where you're at, Olivia, you're in LA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. California is a leader in this kind of renewable energy.
Absolutely. I mean, I think people are they're really cracking down on it, because I mean, it's ironic. People were cracking down on this prior to, but I mean, even just in the last 2 years, the planet is showing us how serious it is. Everything from the floods and the fires and these tsunamis. I mean, nobody's getting out alive anymore. So I'm just hoping that, though California is a leader, I know Mexico too. I was just on holiday there, and it's completely green. I mean, everywhere you go, they're serious about it too. So it's been quite shocking what's happened, with Puerto Rico and Texas. And
these once in a century storms are happening more and more and more, and there's no arguing. I mean, anybody who argues that climate change doesn't exist loses all credibility now.
And also, if there's ever a situation you need to err on the side of caution, it's the climate. Because, like I said, if you screw that one up, it's all over. So it doesn't matter what somebody thinks politically or somebody thinks scientifically. Always take the path that is the safest and the most cautious and the most, gloom and doom scenario. Don't play around with guesswork or, well, I hope that isn't the case, so let's just do this.
Yeah.
And that. I mean, you gotta. That's what needs to happen. So, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that it doesn't have to get to a place where we're all having to kind of evacuate. I think sometimes when there's sort of a 10-year leeway, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, well, we got a decade. Well, no, that means we have that amount of time until, it's
irreversible.
We're done. It's game over. Do you know what I mean?
350 parts per million, right?
Well, also Dale mentioned Holland, and if Holland does something and Belgium does something and France does something, but Austria doesn't, sometimes Austria can mess up all of Europe. Nature doesn't recognize the borders we created.
Right.
So when something happens in Japan, like they've had some bad nuclear accidents and even Chernobyl and stuff, that cloud of radiation, the wind just takes it where it's going to take it. It doesn't care about politics and if you have a dictator or a president or it's nature is just like, and it's Judith Owen, who was on my other show. We talked about this a little bit. She's Harry Shearer's wife. She said the planet's going to be fine. She said it's us that's going to go.
That's right.
That's interesting.
She said the planet will eventually recover.
Yeah, and far greater than the great loss, the Library of Alexandria. Remember,
Yes.
hear about that. This will be, look at all the beautiful art and music and that is happening. The great films that are happening. I mean, I just saw the beginning of the Grammys tonight and Kendrick Lamar and U2. Kendrick Lamar did the most unbelievable opening to a Grammy night. And I'm not a huge rap fan, but that was powerful. And I'm looking at that going, this is astounding. And it's Shakespearean even in a way. And so this, it calls to our very purpose in life, to preserve all this great knowledge and art and wisdom that we have garnered over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how what we're talking about environmentally, it's almost like what it was when it was pure and translucent and fresh, and there's still this budding of spring in the air with the planet. If you were to play music that would match that, it would be medieval music. Funnily enough, it just kind of struck me, because I was just listening to the innocence there and the grace and the harmony is really what harmonious.
Right.
Not just the harmonies that were in that the music evoked, but yeah.
You're gonna do a medieval album.
I know, I love it. I'm so passionate about it, and I mean, maybe it's I don't even think it's just coincidental because I'm English and it's the whole Celtic thing, but I just feel it's something that needs to be out there right now, and I get so excited. It's just ironic that you came on our show when you did. There's this theme out there in the world, I think, that is really wanted. It's like we're really beckoning this theme back. You know, it's almost like everything's cyclical, right? I have the same feeling that we're going to have another revolution, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that we need it. I think that's our human cataclysm, you know, for mankind, for as a species. So bring it on, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's been so awesome having you on this week's show and last week's show, Dale. Let's get to the links where people can buy some of this music. I know on iTunes they can find Dale Ladoucer and the Broke Ensemble, the album Do You Think, where some of the music we've heard comes from. Let's make sure we spell your last name for everybody. It's not really that easy. I'll just turn it over to you. Where's the best place for people to find your stuff?
Crowtown. So that's www.crowtown.com. It's like Motown, but farther north.
Crowtown. Can they also get Ancient Jammers there?
Yeah, they can get everything. The first band, the Mavens, and then we added a sax player and became the Broke Ensemble. We have 2 albums, Brimstone and Clover, and Do You Think, and then the Ancient Jammers one. Yeah, it's all there.
And also, if you go on YouTube, you can find some interesting videos, music videos, interviews, live performances. Dale is very present there. Well, we closed last week's show with a beautiful song called Beautiful Wonder. We got another cool song that I'm a big fan of that I'd like you to tell us about the experience of writing this one. The song is called Cry to Eve.
The greatest little forest near my home is a great place to dog walk. And I was walking with my dog and thinking about our dear friend Kirby, who was getting sicker. And she inspired the beginning of this song. I started writing it on the dog walk, and I quickly turned around and ran home. and it came out of the end of my pen. It was one of those gifts from the gods.
The very best songs come out that way.
I can relate to starting to do something, then the idea comes and you dump what you were going to do. I've skipped classes. I've missed buses. I go, if I don't go back and get my piano or guitar going and write this right now, I'm going to lose it. Yeah, so I get that for sure.
Exactly. Good. Keep doing that.
Got to honor it when it speaks to you, right? Because it can disappear.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. And thank you, Dale. And let's do this again. Come back.
Thank you, both of you. It's been a joy.
So brilliant having you. Thank you.
I want to be greatly missed. See the last kisses fall upon my face. And I can deal with disgrace. I want to be greatly missed. See the last kisses fall to the ground, splashing all around, swimming in the stuff between the planets and your toes. Yeah, sure, everybody knows what should be known, but wait to be reborn. I wanna be reaching out to all, hoping I'm the one to fall, the greatest gift to all. I wanna be placing hands on heads, the needle surrounds the thread, and I don't know what it should have meant, but I will not mend. Swimming in the stuff between the sentences of prose. Yeah, sure, everybody knows what's to know. We're rolling with the show. Should I cry to Eve Primordial? Rolling down her leg, she mopped up any trace of what had ever been before. Spinning in its place, shaken and dazed. Minutes seem like days, of work and toil. Are you ready for the foil? I'll be the first to admit when there's a miss or there's a hit, but I don't know which one this is, so I will not quit. She will not speak, she will not mend, and I am bound to fall. And after all, I miss you, wanting to be mine. And I miss you, wanting to be